Welcome, everyone. It's really nice that you came to join us today for this very brief chat about the Portland Youth Wind Ensemble and the Portland Youth Philharmonic in general. I'm David Hattner. I'm the conductor of the Portland Youth Philharmonic and the musical director of the whole organization. And I'm really grateful that you're all here to hear a little bit about what we're doing and a little about what we normally do as well. These are unusual times, and we've made some interesting plans for the year, and we're going to talk about them, and then we'll take your questions. I want to introduce the members of the panel that are with me today. Most importantly, my colleague, Giancarlo Castro D'Addona, who is now the conductor of the Portland Youth Wind Ensemble. Giancarlo is a distinguished composer whose music I have conducted and some of us will be playing throughout this year. And he's also a fabulous trumpet player who has toured the world with the Venezuelan Brass Quintet and other groups. And also Jason Rodgers, who's the director of bands at Valor Middle School down there in Woodburn. And he's also recently joined the Portland Youth Philharmonic Board of Directors. So we're really grateful to have him on board with us. So let's talk a little bit about what the Portland Youth Wind Ensemble is. It's a I guess we're calling it mixed level, which means it has musicians of various ages. We have musicians as young as 6th grade, but most of the musicians are between 8th and 10th grade. We expect people to have been playing for at least a year before they join. Generally, we perform 4 concerts a year, including visiting at least one school. And all of the musicians in the Portland Youth Philharmonic have the opportunity to take music theory along with their rehearsals every week. So I'm going to pass it over to Giancarlo to talk about some of the details about what the group is going to do this year.
Thank you, David, for the introduction. Welcome, everybody. I'm Giancarlo Castro. I'm the conductor of PYWE at Portland Youth Philharmonic. So normally PYWE rehearsals are every Wednesday from 5:30 to 9 p.m. at Jackson Middle School. But unfortunately, we won't be able to have in-presence rehearsal this fall due to the social distancing requirements. So this fall 2020, we're going to be on Zoom. We are going to split our big ensemble in 3 smaller groups, 2 woodwind ensembles and 1 brass ensembles. Each group will be performed 1 piece. We will have pieces from Lauren Bernovsky and Marcus Grant. Both are amazing American composers. Lauren has 2 pieces, 1 for each woodwind ensemble, and Marcus has 1 piece for the brass ensemble. So I'm gonna be coaching each group 1-hour session, each one. There, you will receive from me directions, tips, advices, any help to know how you should work on your music part and how to work on your video recording as well, because we are going to have a multi-window virtual performance, and that is going to be posted at PYP social network. Okay, and we have also music theory on Friday evening on Zoom as well.
So in addition to what you do with us here at PYP, generally, every musician in the program takes private lessons. That's something that's been a standard in music education for people who want to become advanced on their instrument. We also expect that musicians who play with Portland Youth Philharmonic will participate fully in their school music programs. That means being in the band, being in the orchestra, whatever it is your school offers. It's one of the ways we keep good relations with the teachers in our public schools, and to give them the confidence that if they are willing to lend us or let us borrow their students from time to time, that we will send them back enthusiastic and hopefully with some new ideas that will help their programs be even stronger. Of course, practicing is the most important thing that musicians have to do in between our rehearsals. We only meet once a week, and so we have some requirements. In addition, of course, learning the music that we play in our concerts, all of the musicians in our program are required to learn all their major and minor scales and arpeggios. And this is something we hear in auditions at the end of each season, so you would be required to learn those by next May. Fortunately, we have packets which have all those scales and arpeggios in them on our website, and you can download them and use them whether you join our program or not. They're quite complete and will be quite advanced for most new players to the organization and might have to be adjusted a little bit in terms of range. And of course, we expect our musicians to be in attendance regularly at rehearsals. We have a few excused absences that we allow for various reasons, most particularly to be at concerts of your school bands and orchestras. And we do require that you come to the performances that we give, because it's hard for us to put a concert on stage if we're missing any musicians. So those are the additional requirements beyond the Wednesday rehearsals. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jason to talk a little about the application process, because he's had students who have been through it.
Yes, we do hope that after hearing all of this, you choose to apply. And you can start by going to the website, portlandyouthphil.org, and you can either pull down the menu or type it right into your browser /audition. And you get the application there that you'll need to fill out a number of fields. There is a $30 non-refundable application fee that goes along with that. You might see a deadline that it looks a little bit early. We've extended the deadline to August 24th due to COVID craziness. But if it is at all necessary for you to apply after that date, we ask you to please check with our manager, Kevin Allen, and his email address is kevinallen@portlandyouthphil.org. You don't have to remember that. You'll probably be able to find that very easily on the website.
And on the next slide, I think there we are.
This year, all auditions will be video submissions. They are going to be taken by you or someone in your family that can get a good angle on you. No more than 10 minutes long. We don't expect these to be, huge projects. It can be done just simply on a smartphone, but we do want to see it all in one take. As you're going to find out with your scales and your solo. Don't worry about who sees this, because we don't just go showing this around. This is only going to be heard and watched by the conducting staff, looking for the skills that we need. And again, here's that email to Kevin, Kevin Allen @portlandyouthphil.org. If you had any other questions about how you're uploading or you're emailing or however you need to get that video to us. So you are going to be doing two sort of main sections of this audition. And I'll talk a little bit more about this later in the summary at the end here. So you don't need to be jotting all this down quite yet. We do want to hear at least one major and one minor scale with the arpeggios, 1 to 2 octaves. That's up to you. It's nice to be able to hear some scales that kind of demonstrate a range from low to medium and high on your instrument, so that we can see that you have some you kind of understand the real estate that you're working with there. And then you're going to do a short solo piece. I think some people kind of get a little lump in their throat when they think about solo, but it's not really that scary. It doesn't have to be memorized, but it does have to be performed without any help or accompaniment or recordings. And again, I'll talk a little bit more about that later when I give the summary at the end of this presentation.
All right, so let me talk a little about how you make your video. Sometimes people are a little afraid to apply simply because they know about the Portland Youth Philharmonic Orchestra. They've seen our videos on YouTube, and they think that everyone shows up at PYP as a completed project with great virtuoso abilities, and that is definitely not the case. This is a program that's about development, so we really just want to see exactly where you are, and you'll get feedback on your audition to let you know what we hear and what we see, regardless of what the result is. So when you make your video, just start by saying your name clearly and start playing. Play your major scale and arpeggio, and then your minor scale and arpeggio. And I have made a short instructional video that shows myself playing these things on the clarinet. It's just how simply and slowly they need to be done. And when you finish that, you can play your solo. You can announce what it is, or you don't have to. Most of the time, we recognize the basic pieces that most of the instruments play. And this year, we're doing away with sight reading because we didn't want to deal with the issue of sending music out to be sight read. So that's something we'll work on after you're in the program. So when you make your video, there's a picture of the video from the video I made. You'll want to find a room in your house that has as little outside noise as possible. Make sure you have good lighting that is in front of you and not behind you, so that the light isn't actually in the camera frame. And then if you see the way this picture here is framed, you can see all of my fingers, you can see my embouchure, you can see all the things that will help the judges know exactly what we're doing on the instrument. So film from the waist up, and try not to have the music stand be in the way of any of your fingers or any of that, so that we can see exactly what's going on. And if you play one of the larger instruments like trombone or bassoon or tuba, do the best you can to find an angle so that the instrument is not blocking too much of you while you're playing. And again, please apply. It's almost like getting a free little lesson, because we'll send you some detailed feedback on what we're hearing. And then once you've done the filming, you can upload it onto unlisted YouTube, or put it in a Google Drive, or simply send the file in an email if it will fit to Kevin Allen. You can see the email address there. It'll also be on the website. So as it says, send a link or send the file. Links are very easy for us, and usually on YouTube the quality is quite good. And you can see there for the subject line of the email, PYP new audition, with the name of the player and the instrument. And then you'll be all set. We usually hear all the auditions at once right after the deadline. So once the deadline is passed, you should hear from us within a week. And Giancarlo will talk about what happens after that.
Yes, what's next? So after you submit your video, so the results will be sent by email. So please don't call or email for results. Okay, you're going to receive that for sure. Everyone will receive the feedback. If accepted, musicians will be sent enrollment information. The other point is online summer social is Sunday, September 13. So let me talk a little bit about the online summer social. The summer social is the big organization-wide kick-off meeting and orientation. Normally it is held in person at Jackson Middle School, but this year we will be gathering online due to the COVID situation, of course. Our first rehearsal is going to be on Wednesday, September 16th, and tuition is per semester this year, $475 for fall, starting September, finishing on December.
So let's talk about financial aid. As you know, there is a tuition for the organization, and of course it costs to have private lessons. So one of the goals of the organization is to make sure that anyone who is accepted into the program will make arrangements so that no one has to not participate because of their inability to afford it. So we have quite a generous financial aid fund, and once a student is accepted, that all kicks in. So if assistance is needed for tuition and private lessons and possibly other things, those are things we have done in the past and will continue to do. So for the parents, you fill out the application form for financial aid and submit the 1040 first page and include a deposit to register for the season. For anyone who's in a free and reduced lunch program, they automatically will receive a full tuition scholarship without the deposit. And in those cases, we almost always provide private lesson assistance as well. I'm going to turn it over to Jason.
So I wanted to kind of summarize everything. You got a lot of information here, and it might be difficult to see yourself in that shirt and tie up on the stage. or maybe you can see yourself at that point, but maybe you're having a hard time thinking about all the details between now and then. Obviously, it must be done because you've seen the pictures, you've seen the recordings. You know, we've been doing this for 97 years, so people audition, people get in, but how does it work? As David introduced me, I am the director of bands and choirs at Valor Middle School in Woodburn. Woodburn's just south of Wilsonville and north of Kaiser, where I've been teaching for going on 21 years now. I've had 6 students successfully audition into the PYP organization. That's 4 of them you see right there. From your left to right, that's Nicholas and Adriana and Aaron and Sam. Last season, Nicholas played in the PYP. He started in the wind ensemble, moved up to the conservatory orchestra, and then moved up again to the Philharmonic. Adriana started in the wind ensemble as well on flute, and last year moved up to the conservatory orchestra. Aaron and Sam there both played in the wind ensemble last season. And I'm not really sure where they are right now, if they've moved up or anything like that. But I also had 2 other students that aren't pictured there. Oscar, who was Adriana's classmate, auditioned. He was one of the first students. He ended up having to cut his clarinet career a little short because of some health issues. Also a classmate of Aaron and Sam, Romeo is a very fine horn player, but he made the choice with his family to not actually accept his seat that was offered. So that sometimes happens too. All these students started in band with me in 6th grade. Aaron and Sam and Nicholas auditioned as 7th graders, and Adriana auditioned as an 8th grader. None of these students had private instrument lessons, and so these are just people who had great work ethic in class, you know, great teammates, dependable, always knew their scales, always knew their parts, were good friends and good classmates, and you know, they had that dream, and we were very fortunate. Actually, one of the years that all of these people were in my bands, we did get a run-out concert from Mr. Hattner, where my students were able to see an assembly performance, and then we had a special event actually after that, where my students and PYWE students were able to kind of mix and mingle and even play together a little bit, and my students were able to really see that the skills that were expected of the Portland Youth Philharmonic, they were similar and attainable. They were reachable, and so yes, they were nervous about auditioning, but it was all the kind of the big picture they were nervous about. They were worried about, like, how are we going to drive? How are we going to, you know, my dad works late. How am I going to get a ride? And I told them, have the dream, let the grown-ups around you work out the details. And so they set to preparing for their auditions. All of them, if I remember correctly, played the exact same scales. It's from a scale book that we use at Valor Middle School. Play some good old-fashioned band scales, concert E flat major and C minor, concert A flat major and F minor, with an arpeggio and a 1-octave scale, followed by a 2-octave concert F chromatic. And that was something that they didn't even have to think about. That's something that they had been working on, you know, for 1 or 2 years already. So that part was easy. For the solo, some of these students had already begun looking for things outside of class, whether they were looking for etude books, little solo books, or just finding fun stuff online to play. Some of them actually, though, just chose to play a section out of one of the concert band pieces that we were already playing. That was grade 2.5 or 3. You know, a nice solid section with a lot of melody. And so, you know, what we're talking about here is somewhere around 24 to 32 measures at minimum, really to kind of demonstrate your skills. All of them kind of went into this just with a hope. They got that call back, they got that affirmation, and then it was up to the grown-ups to work it out. And I worked with parents, met with parents, worked out some carpooling, and yeah, they, families had to make some adjustments, but in some cases it's much less than some sports seasons and some club sports and things like that. And then hit the ground running. In terms of their participation in my class, I saw increase of confidence, increase in skills. Talking about their experiences with their private lessons, some of the concepts and the techniques that were being used there. They became even more dependable friends and classmates, students going to them for help. These were people who just loved to play, loved being in band. They were in the classroom before school, during lunch, after school. These are the types of people. I hope that through this little story of my students, that you can see yourself in them, in their shoes, and understand the skills and the expectations that are necessary, and also some of the time requirements and some of the commitments that you need to make. With that, we're going to pass it off to you now for any questions that you might have. We hope we can answer.
Yeah, so please feel free to type them into the chat, or you can virtually raise your hand in Zoom, as you know, to ask them. Let me just add to what Jason said, that we've had a lot of students just like Jason's who come to the Portland Youth Wind Ensemble with an idea that they want to be there, but not 100% sure of what it is they're about to go through or why. And they become enlightened along with a group of people. This is a remarkable group. I conducted it myself for 3 years. And we would start the year at what in the band world is called about a grade 3 level of music, which is an early high school or high middle school level. And we have finished each year above a grade 5, which is an enormous jump in difficulty level for one season. Last year, Giancarlo, of course, he finished the year a few months early, like we all did, with a performance of the Cowboys Overture by John Williams, which was actually a very spectacular performance, which you can see on YouTube in the Sorcerer's Apprentice concert. And in previous years, we've done some big classical works by great composers like Beethoven and Weber, which bands don't often play. So it's an unusual experience that's designed to be different from schools in both repertoire and in focus. So we have a question. Oh, that's an internal question. There must be at least a few of you who have, and then really there's no question that's too basic, like how mean are the conductors, things like that, because sometimes people worry about that. We're actually really nice is the answer to that, but we have expectations. The two words I use to describe this program are, number one is expectations, because we have them. We've found that when you hold expectations very high, students are anxious to meet them. And the second word is pride, because when you've met very high expectations, that is something that comes naturally. I sometimes have to explain what pride is to our students, because it's not the kind of snobby pride that says, well, I'm in this and you're not. I was asked to do something that was really hard, and I had to work really hard at it, and I actually did it, and it felt great. It was something I had to do. We set very high goals, and students have to have daily application of basic principles to reach them. It's setting medium and long-term goals, something that's very beneficial to students. And whilst we're still waiting for a few questions. Let me finally say that the design of the program is not to create professional musicians. It never has been, although many have in fact played in our program, and even the Portland Youth Wind Ensemble has fairly recent members who are now playing in the Chicago and Indianapolis symphonies. But most of the graduates of the Portland Youth Philharmonic Orchestra are going to academic institutions, often quite distinguished ones, to study science and other high academic subjects. So we now have some questions. Is a 10-year-old flute player too young to join? That's about 4th grade. I would say we have had people that young. If the student reads music and is willing to practice 45 minutes to an hour a day, they can probably do it. We'll listen to the audition. We'll give feedback, and if we think it's appropriate for that person to wait a year, we'll say so. But we have had students this young, if they really have talent and they're able to do it. Age would not be a barrier in that case. That would be the answer to that. Okay, the question about practicing together on Zoom, that is, we're unlikely to do together playing on Zoom. It's really going to be coaching one player at a time, and the other players on the part will benefit from hearing their colleagues being coached at the same time. That's really how that will work. So there won't be like an ensemble performance. The performances will consist of people playing like their audition into a recorder with a metronome click track that they follow in their headphone, and then that will be compiled by an editor into a performance. So that will be the final performance.
If I can chime in a little bit in there, I know that there have been some different techniques that band directors and choir and orchestra directors have used to try doing a rehearsal over Zoom. One that sometimes works if you have a relatively clean stream and not a lot of jitters and delay. If all of the musicians are on mute and can simply listen to or watch a conducting track, then each individual is responding to the video that they see at that moment, and it's not trying to coordinate multiple viewers together. So that is something that is possible, but it's not really easy to do it with you being able to hear everybody else. That's the downside, for sure.
Yep. The Zoom rehearsals are something we're going to have to create as we go along. None of us has ever done it. We're learning from our colleagues in other youth orchestras and summer festivals, and my guess is that we're going to get better at it very, very quickly. The next question is about how many hours a week do students commit to PYP related things? That's a good question, and it varies quite widely depending on the ambition of the student. Generally, especially if one is taking private lessons, at least an hour a day of practice is a good place to start. There are very ambitious students within the program who are practicing multiple hours a day, and sometimes quite a few multiples, who are achieving remarkable things. The most important thing is consistency and using the minutes that you have to practice really well. And that's one of the things that all our conductors teach at the Portland Youth Philharmonic is practice technique, how to practice well, how to use your time well, how to use a metronome well, all of those things. Sometimes I think as much as we teach music, we teach thinking. We teach how to organize your thinking, because if you're playing music well, if you're counting and listening and tuning and doing all that simultaneously, your brain is very active. So the better you are at musical performance, the better you are at simply organizing your thought. Do you have any further thoughts on that, Giancarlo?
Oh, yes. We have, especially on PYWE, we start with warm up, doing scales together. And that is very fun because everybody is playing basically different notes of the scale, and we are creating chords, we are creating all kind of things, and you can listen between each other. What is the tune working? Yes, but in this time, due to the situation, so we have to understand how to handle the situation, having Zoom meeting, but we are working hard on that. Yes, and we have another. The other question is, are we allowed to have metronomes in the audition videos? So I was thinking about that. So one of the most important thing when you are a musician is practicing is the practicing with the metronome. So I did a lot when I was young, so many times practicing with the metronome. And yeah, so you know, so you can practice with your metronome, but the metronome is not allowed at the moment to record your video, because the thing is we have to make an evaluation how you can be steady with the tempo without a metronome sounding on your ear at the moment you are recording.
Yes, so I would strongly recommend playing the audition without the metronome, and that way we can evaluate how steady your tempo is, and also how well you count the rhythms within the beats. Those are the two things that the metronome helps with. And the next question is about, at what point do you offer music theory? And that is immediately is the answer to that. All of the musicians in our wind ensemble, in our young string ensemble and conservatory orchestra are taking theory every week. This year it will be online, and it'll be on Friday evenings. So right away you get put into whatever level of theory. If it's a very basic level, then you're going to be learning key signatures and clefs and things like that. And it can get all the way to where we have some quite wonderful composers who are students in the program. In some cases, we're going to be playing their music. The Portland Youth Wind Ensemble played a piece by one of our violinists a couple of years ago. It was actually a very good piece that everyone enjoyed very much. In fact, most of us left rehearsal with it stuck in our heads. It was so catchy, and now it's going to be stuck in my head again. So there you have it. So have any of these answers shaken loose any new questions for any of you? I would just say that we have openings for all the winds and brass and percussion instruments in the wind ensemble. So if you know players who are wanting to advance themselves, who are looking for additional challenges, please help us spread the word. And it should also be said that if you're taking this audition, there is the possibility that you'll be placed actually in one of the two orchestras. It's not only you're auditioning for the organization, and if somebody turns out to be a particularly advanced player, they may be put in the conservatory orchestra, or in fact in the Philharmonic orchestra itself. It has happened. Generally, younger players join at the PYWE level, and they start working hard, and before you know it, they have the skills that are necessary to play in the orchestras. Do any kids play in both PYWE and MYS? The answer is yes. There are always players who play in both organizations in any of our ensembles, because the only Saturday rehearsals that we have are the strings of the Portland Youth Philharmonic come on Saturday afternoon. And even when some of them have also been in MYS, they've been able to do both. So that's a yes.
I'm also doing both. So
and that's right. Giancarlo is conducting at both, and Inez Voglar-Belgique is going to coach at MYS this year, in addition to conducting our young string ensemble. So if you want some additional inspiration, shall we say, go to our YouTube page and have a look at what we are doing. What you see there, most of the videos are of the Philharmonic Orchestra itself. This is the original orchestra that was founded in 1924 as the Portland Junior Symphony, and has continued without any break until last spring, all through there, with only 5 permanent conductors. It's the oldest youth orchestra in the country. It's one of the more interesting artistic traditions in the country. And it has always been great, even from the very first concert, if the newspapers are to be believed. It was, as I tell people, it was great before my parents were born, which is pretty incredible. And someone has asked, do you know the repertoire for this fall? So what we've done, since we knew we were going to have to play online and have compiled performances, I thought it would be interesting, rather than to take existing repertoire and break it down into individual players playing into a computer, which is never as good as the real thing. We would ask some brilliant composers to craft new music that's written specifically to be played this way and then compiled, so that those composers could avoid any musical issues that become difficult in that format, and also take advantage of some opportunities that writing for distanced performance would provide. So we actually, for the entire organization, have commissioned 14 new pieces of music. Three of them are for the Portland Youth Wind Ensemble. And so that will be the repertoire for PYWE. And for the orchestras, the two orchestras, Conservatory and PYP, will be combined into one large pool of players, and the composers are writing a piece for each section of the orchestra. So there'll be a piece for violins, a piece for violas, and so forth. Giancarlo is writing a piece for the trumpets, trombones, and tuba, which will also be adapted for the oboes, bassoons, and contrabassoon. And it's a great piece, really exciting. So I hope you'll all get to hear it when it's premiered in November, once we get it all put together. So new music written by a lot of voices that have not been heard around here. So we're excited about that. All right, well, I think, unless another question comes in, I'm gonna say thank you to everyone. And again, this session has been recorded, so we'll post it, and anyone who has questions, feel free to refer them to it. Please encourage them to audition. We'll continue to hear auditions even after the deadline until all of the seats are filled. So, but it's in order to start on time, it'd be better to have your application in. There's a question that came in about somebody who already submitted a video that we haven't yet watched, and they feel like they could do it better. Yeah, please just make a new one and then send Kevin Allen an email saying, please throw out my old audition. This is the one I want the conductors to watch. Sure, that's fine. So with that, I think, I hope you're encouraged to want to work with us. Oh, we have one last question about the size of the groups. Giancarlo, do you have an idea of how big the different groups are going to be?
I think so. Our big ensemble is 35 or 40 people. So, and we're going to split probably between 2 or 15, one of 10, probably something like that. So I don't remember the real numbers now.
Yeah, the Portland Youth Wind Ensemble has varied in size every year. It's been as big as 65 to 70 players in a big year, and it's probably been around 50 players in a smaller year. But it's because it's a band, it can be quite big. But my goal when I took it over 5 years ago, has it been really, was I wanted to have a symphonic band. I wanted to have 95 players in it. We never quite got there, but we had a very good group. I will say that the biggest instrument of need at the moment is trombone. We really need trombone players. So tell your friends that play that there's a spot for them. So feel free to send questions to Kevin Allen for me, or you can use the information at email address, and we will respond. We're happy to do that. So any final thoughts, Jason or Giancarlo? It's all good.
All good.
All good. Well, thank you, everyone. Good luck on your auditions. And I hope that we'll get a chance to meet you over Zoom very soon and in person as soon as it's absolutely possible to do that. So have a wonderful evening and keep practicing.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye
you,
now.
everyone.